Blog Talk Radio.
Oh my God, that is so him. Did you see him? That's really Aseer, that guy right there. Yeah, that one with the feathers. Oh my God, isn't he so beautiful? He's just so dreamy, you know? And I really love being around him. He's absolutely fabulous. It's just that, every time I talk to him, he's just about this black talk, everything he says is just so black. It's just like black. I mean, I don't even, know what to say to him sometimes. It's like so black, and it's black people, and it's black stuff, and it's black hair, and it's black thing. I mean, it sometimes drives me crazy. Do you know what I mean, Sally? I mean, do you?
I talk that black talk, that you out in white talk. Hip walk, push it talk, jacking like a beanstalk. Open up, let us in. We be about that dividend. We be about that major move. Ain't think about no extra friends. We want that black talk, and you out in white talk. Hip walk, push it talk, jacking like a beanstalk. Open up, let us in. We be about that dividend. We be about that major move. Ain't think about no extra friends.
Well, I huff step up, blow the whole house down. Major sound, that's time for the down. People who come from miles around. I make this white folks talk the frown, because they know when the chips are down. I'm a type of nigga burn the whole shit down. Wear that crown on my head, maybe maroon, maybe red, maybe Morocco, maybe Fed. Most act live when they really dead. Beta Satan, they be waiting. Wanna eat your food before you get it on the plate end. Just Satan taking a cent. They oats on empty books. A society based on looks. Lucifer cooked the books. Now proof that by the door. Call me that noble more. Navigate that 7 seas. Crusaders all they need. Call me that black pope. I sell these crackers dope. That's round them in like rope. Ask me if I like them, no. My quote's already dope. Before this rhyme was dope. Simple across that capital mode. Cause I'm the one that's dope. I find a way to talk about that black talk every day. That's how I always say that I am here to say that black talk, that you out in white talk. Hip walk, push it talk, jacking like a beanstalk. Open up, let us in. We be about that dividend. We be about that major move. Ain't think about no extra friends. We want that black talk, and you out in white talk. Hip walk, push it talk, jacking like a beanstalk. Open up, let us in. We be about that dividend. We be about that major move. Ain't think about no extra friends. When I walk in the party, it be like who is showed it. I feel they eyes up on me, cause I'm the one they wanted. Because I got it, flown it. I teach it, take it, own it. I whip it, rip it, show it. Like Zora on a horse it. This glamour glitch and gloss it. This fragrance fly and floss it. I spend so much it's costly. Empress is gumbo sauce it. Niggas is mad cause I lost it. Another life, another time, get off me. Cause I'm that earthly coffin. Black Bonner be the boss it. White folk, they love feeding off me. But I be killing them softly. So if you bring that here, you better be very clear. The Zeus that tears an empress of 10,000 years is here. Put black talk in your ear. That truth you might just fear.
I talk that black talk, that you out in white talk. Hip walk, push it talk, jacking like a beanstalk. Open up, let us in. We be about that dividend. We be about that major move. Ain't think about no extra friends. We want that black talk, and you out in white talk. Hip walk, push it talk, jacking like a beanstalk. Open up, let us in. We be about that dividend. We be about that major move. Ain't think about no extra friends.
Hotter as a baby. How he's not can't take the heat now. Hey everybody, you're now tuned in live Friday night Super Heru Radio 3.0. I'm your host, Aseer the Dugateer. Along with my co-host, Side, Selena, Empress of 10,000 years. Moore's bugging out in the bathtub right now. I hope everybody is good, man. And I hope everybody's week has been so far so good. There's so much stuff that be going on, We just need to sometimes just unplug in order for you to maintain whatever little sanity, whatever you got left. I know how that be. But specifically speaking, I definitely want to give respect and shouts out to those people who like I said, have been seeing some of the subtle influences and things that have been affecting things recently in the game as well as outside. You know, the game being one, the political aspect of so-called societal life, but then also being an aspect of the mundanity that we be having to just deal with every day, just to be you and just do you. Things can be so hard sometimes, and you know, we come from situations in which we, from a very early age, have been taught to conform whatever our ideas are because, you know, they may be perceived as, or we may be perceived as too much, you know. And, you know, we got to dead that type of mentality because in the long run, that is just a form of self-inhibition. And we know, we as black folks, we be having to, what they say, what's the saying go? We sometimes have to fly for what regular other people just have to. We sometimes have to fly to what regular people can just walk to. You know what I mean? So, it's been definitely one of those interesting weeks for me, you know, to say the least. And like I said, we're just going through recalibration and just making sure that the things and goals that we have set for ourselves will manifest based upon our persistence. Because you know, anytime that you're persistent with anything in this reality, especially in a country called America, everybody will do their damnedest to throw you off of that. So we have to, again, work doubly as hard sometimes just to maintain a certain balance of what it is we've achieved and have been able to accomplish, and work to safeguard that from other people seeking to pollute those things and to thwart whatever progress that you have made based upon you not doing it, let's say, for them, or doing it how they may have wanted you to. This is the time, like I said, in which we are put in contact with the exact opposite of whatever we're dealing with. So in coming up in the occult or understanding how things work for real, we get to a point where we start to sometimes overly anticipate certain occurrences that don't necessarily have a vested means of expression in our life so far as we go. But what happens is we wind up drawing these conclusions closer to us based upon our feelings of insecurity, our feelings of inadequacy, our feelings that maybe this person may know more than me, so I have to listen to them. But given a certain instance, you would not even be around certain people if it wasn't for this consciousness. So what does that mean? That basically says that we will sometimes put ourselves or stay in places and positions we don't need to be in just to maintain a certain degree of consciousness or a certain degree of accommodating energy for other people, just because we feel that they may have something that can contribute or may not be able to contribute to what else we're doing. But either way, it makes no difference, because those of us that do those of us that do have this drive or this feeling that we're supposed to be doing more than what we're doing, we're the ones that have been impregnated with this idea that we can't necessarily put our finger on, but we do know is something that is maybe more real than things that we tangibly can touch in this reality. Mainly that when you're the type of person who knows that the spirit world definitely affects the physical world, and you are seeking a form of spiritual unification within yourself to be able to safeguard yourself from the material pitfalls that the soul will sometimes be thrust into to throw itself off of its main course, you know, we can then all bear witness that we've passed through situations and times in which we have all been, in a sense, victimized by what it is we thought we was going to be involved in, or who it is we thought we was friends with, so forth and so on. But in the end, the lesson is always for us, not for the people who betray. Because the people who betray you and the people who put you in positions to try to be subservient of them, or people who want to try to, like, make fun of you after you don't fuck with them no more, or when you have made a clear delineation to say, hey, I'm not going to mess with this person, and then you start hearing crap that people talk about you, that this person that you don't mess with has been talking about you. In the end, what it really is a cry for help. Now, the thing with us as men, when you're dealing with men now, the thing with men is that we don't really like to play stuff like that. We don't really like to be in situations where we have to address another man's flaws. You know what I mean? Like, men, traditionally, we let each other do each other. You know what I mean? In the sense that a real man is a man who's going to do him regardless. You see what I'm saying? And men don't really discuss the shit they're going to do, you know what I'm saying, with each other unless they got it in a position where they know it's going to happen. So when you have men who act the opposite of that, when you have men who seek to spread gossip and rumors and all types of shit about you, and you're not even in their cipher, you're not even around them, you don't even really think about them or try to intone their name in your throat matrix, then what you are dealing with are people who are obsessive personalities, compulsive personalities that are all basically being put on Front Street now that we're in July, as we have now entered the realm of Cancer. So just like a Cancer, rumor mills and speculations and stuff like that, opinions not really based on fact but based on conjecture and how people are feeling more so than what is actually being done or said. These things are all reference points or examples of energy that has led to the stagnation of our people in this reality. We've been dealing with all of that stuff for years, you know, almost hundreds of years now. And nothing, if not anything, has changed the basic outcome of the fact that we are still no more unified than we were at the fall of this whole thing. So the question then becomes is, well, what can we do, or what's going to be the thing to unify us and get us to the point that we're actually able to see a physiological, spiritual, or supernatural change within one or any of us? And so this is where knowledge, wisdom, and understanding comes in. The problem with that, though, is that your knowledge, your wisdom, and your understanding can be shaped depending on who you allow in your life to tell you and interpret these things for you. So you'll have a lot of different people and a lot of different groups who come out and they say that they can provide this and provide that for you and get you and put you in positions in which you need to be, because this is the point in which we all supposed to be black people and rising up and doing all this shit together. No. But in the end, what boils down to is the fact that we do not have a working means of open communication with each other. Because nobody want to be put in a position to have to back up the little bullshit or whatever that they've probably been doing for a certain amount of time. And nobody, in a sense, wants to stand up and act as the real, true, objective mediator. They want to look like they're objective with things, but in the end, if they were that objective and it was this, there would actually be something that would come from these so-called moments of conjecture that we get into with one another. Like I said, the proof is in the pudding. How many people have actually been helped, benefited, unified behind the series of things that happened from the time in our so-called conscious community from the time that this guy became president to now? How many issues or whatever have been resolved since then? How, since this guy has been in the position to represent you, or socially or whatever, how has he or how has anyone in the country truly benefited from the remarks or from the so-called projects that this person has put in? To me, it seems like since this dude went in and we knew that this was going to happen, that being that he was one of their first openly occultic presidents, you know what I'm saying, which they was actually able to use a form of spellbinding and necromancy, stuff like that, to help get him in there. This is the time in which we were supposed to have seen something beneficial manifest from something that this one did. But nothing has come to pass that has actually helped original people. So the question is, if original people were put in a position spiritually to be seen as coming back into their power, then why is it we are at a position in which we are still, quote-unquote, powerless? Not as a mass, not as a group, but as an individualistic people. We are still dependent upon this reality. A lot of us still depend on this reality to define the parameters of what we should be doing or what we shouldn't be doing. So, as great as it is to get your own gold and get your own silver and everything else, you know what I'm saying, to start to safeguard yourself and become self-sufficient in terms of an alternative currency, that is just dealing with you on a commercial level. You can't eat gold, man. You can't eat silver. You can't eat platinum. You can acquire these things in the meantime to do that. But what happens if the modicum of exchange switches up so much for people, that shit is even too high for people to deal with. So what happens is you're stuck with all this gold you can't really do shit with. But then at the same time now, you're stuck with the obligation of protecting huge amounts of so-called gold that technically you still have to get someone to send you anyway. See, the sovereignty, we got terms like sovereignty and stuff like that confused, you know what I mean? And we're not looking at it from a physical, from also a practical, hey buddy, a practical nature. We're still looking at sovereignty from a idealistic aspect. But that is not really the sum purpose or the sum total of what it means to truly be that. Sovereignty is something that is individual to each person. You know what I'm saying? It's how you see yourself. It's how you order your new world. It's how it's going to be ordered or not ordered. It's not going to be about, it's not about what they say you're going to be. It's about whether you say you are in contravention to what we say you are. And can you stand on your own square and manifest that? Or are you going to talk to me about a group of people who lived 2,000 years ago and how you descend from them, and these people are here within you, but you can't really do nothing to summon the power that they have and left you within you today. You understand? We're getting to a point where people, I feel like we're getting past the double-edged sword thing. So we need to take more of an active control in how it is we assume who and what we are, who and what original people, a.k.a. black people, a.k.a. Moorish people, a.k.a. original, autochthon, indigenous people are going to be in the millenniums to come. This is the time now when we're solidifying what that future is going to be. Right now. Not 2012, not 2013, this moment that we're in right now. Because everything in the future is built on minuscule moments up and culminating in a grand event. How many grand events have we lived in since, let's say, we started the show? Think about how many astrological events that never have happened in thousands of years, 10,000 years and shit. These things is happening every other week. Every other day, you're seeing some kind of extreme feat of nature, and it's bugging everybody out to the point where people don't even know what to say. Like that giant dust bowl that went through Arizona the other day. Well, what's up with that? Where did that come from? You understand? Like what is the impetus of that? It would be great, you know, because, you know, everybody's like, oh, well, that's the white man. He working with this. And okay, it would be great to put a lot of what happens on this nigga because it's convenient. But he is not as powerful, or it is not as powerful as we think. It is more powerful in our minds than it is in the physical world. And you think I'm not playing? Tell one of these American niggas as hard as they are to go and throw a bomb at China and see what happens. Tell them to go and do something in North Korea and see what happens. Tell them to go into a country like Russia or something and pop off some shit and see what happens. The powers that be exist under a perception called MAD. Right? The entire nuclear exchange, nuclear proliferation, nuclear children of the atom shit is based on a concept they refer to as MAD. MAD stands for Mutually Assured Destruction. So what that means is that you're not going to nuke me, and I'm not going to nuke you, because if you send your nukes, and even if I don't send my nukes, the world is destroyed. So we will mutually destroy each other if we continue to use this. So, because they know that they have the tendency, and ultimately what they want is the full-on destruction of the universe and everything else, they have to act like they're about peace. So like I said, they believe that war comes from peace, that you cannot have peace without war. Therefore, war is an intricate aspect of the peace process. Because if you don't have no peace, then you can't have no war. But that's not true. But that's true when you live in a society that's constricted and contingent upon truth based on hostile takeover. Truth based upon me wanting you to think that things is one way when they really not. So we're at a stage, like I said, in our evolution, in our time period, in our history as original people or as people in general, that all we got to do is decide what we're going to do. You know what I'm saying? Because once we decide that we want to do something, that's when it gets done. Yet, we don't really know what it is we want to manifest because we're almost bombarded with too many choices. The concept of choice is itself an illusionary concept. Because there's certain things people will act like they have a choice in and they really don't. We don't have no choice. You don't have no choice about breathing. You don't have no choice about eating. You don't have no choice about certain things. You don't have no choice whether or not you want to fly and walk. You know what I'm saying? Fly under your own volition or walk under your own volition. All you can do is what you're supposed to do in the moment. And you are still under, as long as we're physical, we're still under the parameters or the rules of, good night, buddy, physical reality. You know what I'm saying? So again, when we talk about sovereignty, when we talk about these things, let's be more rational as to where we at, as opposed to, let's say, the contextual aspect of what sovereignty is supposed to be for us. I know what it's supposed to be, but what is it right now? And how are we manifesting that to the best means as possible? How are we taking full advantage of the application of this God-given right every day? Now, sovereignty, again, has nothing to do with paperwork. You understand? It has nothing to do with paperwork. Paperwork is actually a physical representation of distrust. How about that? For the fact that at one time when we were dealing with our own universal society and conjecture how it is we live, we didn't need no paperwork. Just like at one time in Kemet, we didn't need to write nothing down. We didn't need to carve no pictures and nothing else. What?
You can say tonight. Say hotep to everybody.
Hotep.
Say peace.
Peace.
Say I am.
Oh, I am.
An Asiatic. What kind of man?
No bad man.
That's right.
Right.
I think he's still here. He pressed the okay button.
Okay. Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, exactly. So you see,
you got a little nervous, but you wanted to say goodnight to everybody. Say goodnight, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Say peace. Hotep.
that's what's up. So you see, I be having
right there. Knowledge.
That's right. That's right. See, I be having to start with this dude early. We had to start with him early because where we're at, in the environment that we're at, there's original people around, but a lot of these original people are on some subservient. You know, we just do what people tell us to do. We work for everybody. We're always the toiler. And that's not the case anymore, man. We don't necessarily have to be that. But as I'm saying, just in doing it after that, is the fact that we are in our own way. You know what I'm saying? We are stopping our own position and progress in instances when we seek to isolate each other from each other. So, again, just so that way the people know and everybody else in this world, Blog Talk Land, know, me personally speaking, I will work and can work with anyone so long as there is no exploitation going on and no altogether unseen hidden motives. Because with me, with my moon in Scorpio, I'm going to see that first. So a lot of people don't have no win or in with me specifically. I'm just speaking about me personally. They don't have a certain in with me with shit because I be peeping niggas from off the rip. So if I know, feeling-wise, I'm meeting you and we start talking about doing business or doing something or whatever, but then, you know, we talking about how we friends, but then you always throwing a camera in somebody's face. You know what I'm saying? To me, that's suspect. To me, it's like you want to be my friend, let's say, in the media, in the public, more so than you want to be personally, and that's cool. But at the same time, that does not make a friend to me. Also, we as black people, we give our loyalty away too quick, too early sometimes for people that we kind of know is not really working. But we've been so used to casting our pearls of swine that sometimes we don't really know when to say enough is enough. You know, a lot of long-term beef, a lot of shit could be deaded just by people agreeing not to fuck with each other. But it be when you try to extend a relationship sometime past the boundaries of what it was meant to do is when you actually wind up getting caught up. When your friends wind up becoming your enemies. That's when it happens. There's nobody that I went out here in this life that I've been living to say purposely, I'm against this person. I'm not the type of person, or we're not the type of people to start to try to create campaigns against people. But see, people who do that are people who have other agendas and are serving other people and seek to taint you, again, to other people. The same way Iago tried to taint Othello to the Venetian Republic. But in that story, let's say of that tragic Moor, Othello, when you really read it, you really see that Iago was in love with Othello. And he was jealous of the fact that he had a relationship with Desdemona. You understand? So we're dealing with a lot, man. We're dealing with a lot in terms of how people perceive themselves and what they expect out of certain things and people. You know? Even when you read, whether you're reading Othello in Shakespeare, whether you're reading about Aaron in Titus Andronicus, or you're reading about the Moor, the Prince of Morocco, in the story The Merchant of Venice. You know what I'm saying? About Shylock the Jew. It always boils down to us being in a position of power and us allowing certain people who are not really on that level to come amongst us and do trading. And that's when we get screwed up. So in essence, the ultimate result of Iago, meaning the antagonist in Othello, the result of Iago's intrigue to that matter and Othello's own internal weaknesses ended up in the murder of Desdemona at the hands of, again, her Moorish husband. So we are at a time now when you have Moors, original people, who is out here actively trying to promote themselves as one thing when really they have really no idea about what it is they're dealing with, because we are so far away from what some of the elders had left down from that even a lot of the elders don't even know. You know what I'm saying? And that's not our fault. You understand? Iago, again, as a physical representation, when you really do the story, he is representative of Caucasian males, Caucasian male-dominated society in general. The Caucasoid male wants to be in the bed between me and my woman. That's what he wants. That's heaven to them. You understand? Therefore, there's no other room for anything else. Meaning that they have no other way to really express themselves because they constantly feel on the outside of shit. That's why when you hear the term interracial, you automatically think about black people and white people. You don't ever think about a Chinese person, a Puerto Rican person, a Bangladeshi person, and a person from Russia, or a Sri Lankan person mixing with somebody from Samoan, because all them people is melanated. You only get a juxtaposition in black and white when you deal with black and white people. So there has to be a reason for this. What is the ancestral relationship or whatever is going on with these quote-unquote two quote-unquote individualized races? What's going on with them ancestrally where it's a constant battle just between the two of them and everybody else in the world has to kind of choose a side of who they're going to fuck with, who they ain't? What's going on? Who benefits from that? Black and white. Who benefits? This is when we start to ask the real questions, because once you start to ask the real questions, a lot of the smoke mirrors and the smoke screens that they set up to keep you from doing that start to go away. Because now you start to ask stuff that's dealing and going right back to what they don't want to talk about, which again is the money. There's a book that I urge everybody to get called The Forgotten Cause of the Civil War. This is one of those books that when you read it, it really, and it's very small. Sometimes some of the greatest knowledge comes in books that's only like a couple of pages. But this book is great. And again, written by a white man. Because, you know, a lot of times when you start to work on yourself and become an individual scholar, the first thing black people want you to do, or people from Western society want you to do, where your sources, cite your sources, where your sources come from. What if the source came from the creator? What if you was divinely inspired to research something that put you in a certain way that got you a set of information that a lot of people who don't believe in God and don't believe in shit wouldn't be able to really put together like that? The benefits of spirituality are endless because you're always in a position to work with the unseen powers. So nobody can really see what you're doing until it actually gets done. And then it's like, well, damn, I didn't know he was doing that. That's why it's not good to talk about the shit you're trying to do before you actually know that it's going to happen. I don't do that. There's a lot of stuff I'm working on right now and all of that a lot of the haters that we have know that we've been working on for a minute, but I'm not going to speak on it until I know it's imminent. So some of them, one of those things is the book and so forth, so on. But me, based on my history, and I know how shit is, I can't even put out inklings of anything until it's a definite. Because I have so many people who are supposedly colleagues and supposedly people in the doing similar works who are just looking for this bigger and better thing, the next thing to jump on, the next thing to talk about, the next movie to bust down, so you always waiting on somebody else to initiate your knowledge, initiate your ascension, initiate your sovereignty. We can't do that. I just feel like we got to stop fence sitting, man. Because right now, this Uranus in retrograde that we're about to start to go through on the 10th is going to last from the 10th, let's say from the 10th to next December. You know what I mean? So like for a period of 5 months. So this is where Uranus comes in as the uniqueness or as the individualized power to help you put aspects of your abstract self in order or to adjust them. So this is like the real adjustment bureau right here, if anybody who saw that movie, which was really about a division of the NSA, but in actuality, I think it's more about Uranus and the entrance and the power that Uranus is exerting in Aries and shit like that right now. It's very, very powerful. So this reorganization thing that you feel going down and all of that is very much indicative of this internal feeling that's coming from a galactic source. So there's all these things going down. One of the things they ain't talking about is the crippled nuclear reactor in Nebraska, which is at critical mass right now. Okay? It's very, very serious. Because coincidentally, the same people who built the one in Japan, are now the ones going through it, who built the one in Nebraska. Because there's only like maybe 2 or 3 nuclear reactor contracting companies in the world. So they all basically outsource to the same people. So in that, when the whole thing went down in Nebraska maybe 2 weeks ago or whatever, it totally destabilized the coolant system in the nuclear reactor. In Nebraska, which is in the quote-unquote heartland of the United States, they downplaying this shit like crazy. This is the new BP shit, which they finding out now that nobody really got no money from that BP thing but BP and the United States government and Homeland Security, which is really not a stretch for us to believe. However, this is like these people who really believe that that money was going to go to Haiti after them doing that telethon and all of that. This is after they did the whole fake We Are the World thing again, in which they had Kanye acting like Michael, and then they had, what's his name, Neo in the position that Lionel Richie was in, and they had Beyonce where Barbara Streisand was standing. Like, it was a grand ritual of them, again, trying to put everybody back under the era of Saturn, in which Pluto was in Libra during the 80s. To the point they got a new type of crack coming out. For those people that's doing cocaine, you better stop doing that shit right now. Because the DEA is putting worms in it. They're growing it with a certain worm larvae now in the weight. So that way when they pound it out, step on it or whatever to put it out, they'll kill the users and they'll kill the dealers. Because the larvae are microscopic. That parts of people's anatomy is rotting off. Like niggas' noses is rotting off. People putting it on their gums. Their gums is teeth is falling out, all types of shit. Because it's a genetically created larvae. It's not natural, in the plant itself. This is also why they're drawing down so many soldiers out of Afghanistan. Because they already know that once they start importing the opium or heroin to wherever else they're going to send it, namely China, namely here in America, they're going to be able to do a lot of population control of the drug addicts anyway. This is all part of population control. But like I said, in the end, it's not going to work because the UN, to Google this, go onto their website and go to the section that talks about population increase and decrease, and saying that Europe has the lowest birth rate next to Japan, next to Japan, and next to China. China shot themselves in the foot after the revolution when they told people they need to start having 2.5 kids. But then what they started doing was killing the females. They wanted more males. So right now their army or their country is disproportionately male. You understand? So a lot of the aggressive stuff that they did from 1955 all the way up to, let's say, 2002 to become, outright the white man, they are now paying for that. So now they're trying to double back and try to come out now as like a come out with another face to show like they're not necessarily in accordance with, you know, how the quote-unquote Illuminists and world bankers are trying to do their shit. So they're trying to look like they better now. To help sell this to the American people during the mid-'90s, let's say late '80s, early '90s, they started coming out with all of these movies about China. The first one I remember, was one with Michael Douglas called Black Rain, where it was about the Yakuza joining up, the Yakuza in Japan, joining up with elements of the Tongs to then join what they refer to as the worldwide conglomerate, which would be the quote-unquote elite, right? Then, you know, all these other movies, Red Sun and the Rush Hour shit and all the Jackie Chan movies, all the Jet Li movies, all of that stuff. All of these things started coming out as a means to kind of get the people more inundated with Asian culture. This is a form of incrementalism. This is also why they have so many British on-air personalities as game show hosts, as newscasters, as all of this other thing, because Britain is the parent of America. Therefore, America is the harlot, Britain is the warlock. So, the warlock creates the world stage and then puts America, the harlot, on the straw. You see? And while everybody's enamored with that, behind the scenes, the pimp's pimp is in Rome. All of this was instituted through the Treaty of Versailles, the Treaty of Marseille, the establishment of the Club of Rome, the establishment of the colonial prostitution, the colonial global empire ring, and then all of that is compounded in behind with the white supremacy thing. So, like we said on last show, Russia basically said that the United States is basically Nazi Germany. The United States is where Nazi Germany was in 1935. But it's cool because essentially it always boils down to the same people. And like I said, if you really want to do the due diligence, it's very simple. All you got to do is go online and get a list, get the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island. Okay? Get that book and then write down all of the participants who they discuss in that book. After you write those people down, you research their descendants and what families that they married into. You follow the male descendants, the white Caucasian male descendants, because those are the ones that they're going to use to foment the agenda. After you do that, then you follow where those descendants are in terms of the generational shit today and what forms of society they went to. Did they go into entertainment? Did they go into business? Did they go into textiles? Did they go into architecture? Did they go into government? Whatever. And you will see just how wide the net is, and that there is no such thing as fair and balanced journalism or one man, one vote. That does not exist. How can that be when everybody is in the same family? Everybody that's against each other, everybody, whatever, when you do the history on them, they're all related. So how is it ever anybody that's from the outside of that when from the very beginning of this shit, all of these people, they even tell you that this dude is related to Jackson and Lincoln and the rest of these people. They even tell you he's related to Hillary. How is he related to Hillary Clinton, Sarah Palin, Ronald Reagan, George Bush, Dick Cheney, and somebody else? How can he be related to all of these different people when all of these different people are supposed to be different people? I thought nepotism was against the law. Well, was something that could be that you could sue somebody for and receive a compensation behind, because that's not fair. It's a known fact that this dude's pops funded the Nazi war machine. And he was tried under the Trading with the Enemy Act, the same act that they brought up against this dude with him trying to mess with Gaddafi. It's a known fact in law. Everybody knows, but these people don't talk about that. They act like that has no relevance to George Bush, who wound up running CIA or created CIA out of Odessa and the OSS, to all of the scandals that came after that. Yet, again, these are Caucasian people in their society, and in their society, you could do that. It's only an issue with us because we're not really in their society. We're orbiting it. There was, in the 70s, Jim Brown went through an issue when he was filming The Dirty Dozen for Hollywood back then. There's a movie called The Original Dirty Dozen with Jim Brown and I think Steve McQueen's in it. Everybody who was like the Schwarzenegger and people now of the day was in it. Anyway, when he was leaving the United States, he was using the United States passport, but then on the way back, he got into an issue coming back in because he wasn't listed as a citizen of the United States on the passport. Because at that time, black people still wasn't being recognized or considered that in international affairs. We were still seen as wards of the state. But they couldn't necessarily convey that to him in the right way without revealing the fact that there were two different United States and that there were two different nationalities at play in the argument. So on the surface, the argument was he was not listed as a citizen on his own passport, but the real issue was the fact that he can't be listed as a citizen in the United States passport because he is a different citizen from the United States corporation. Long story short, it took them 2 months. So they eventually waved something, hooked them up, and got him in. That's also the aspect of the whole Boule thing, is that they don't want you to be... Boule people are not sanctioned for international shit. So whenever Jesse Jackson would go out, do something international, or whenever Farrakhan would go and do internet, all of that is not sanctioned by the white people they serve. So it's a deep issue for them in regard to the correction of how they perceive their society moving into the future, because we're an obstacle in the fact that everything they're doing in the name of the original American people, and that's us. You just can't be recognized as that openly or have what they would consider brown skin, because their society, again, is coming from the perspective that they are a country based on a constitution created for them by their forefathers. But their forefathers, by the very definition, at the time that these things were going down, were slaves subject to the whims and jurisdiction of their denizen masters, who were our lighter-skinned to brown-skinned cousins who came over here from Albion and who happened to be bringing with them their Caucasoid serfs to build up land purchased from us for them to send money back to our cousin who was the king. Because, like I said, when you do the historical data and knowledge on it, at the time of the so-called Boston Tea Party, a lot of the taxes were actually being relaxed and released due to the political policies that was being worked out between us and the king. So what these dudes decided to do was try to get they black sympathizers to help them get a charter to then set up something for them so that way they could then be on an equal standing with their so-called black sympathizers and then work with them to get rid of the greater Moorish Empire in general that was enslaving everybody. So, again, we're the good guys and the bad guys. But they've always been at the whim and subject of what somebody else want to do. That's why they're not really from nowhere. So the naturalization process that took place in terms of the adding of the 13th and 14th War Amendment, in which they did the whole 3/5 of a man thing, happened way after the original naturalization process of 1797. You understand? So we're talking about two different forms of naturalization. And at that time, the only people of European descent that got nationalized were those who had some type of indigenous relative over here. People who were related to the house of, let's say, the Baron de Cameron and the Joachim Toon family that eventually, in Europe, that eventually became known as the Cameron family on the black side, and then the Washington family on the white side. That's why you'll never meet a white man named Washington. You'll never meet a white man named Jackson. And when you do, it's rare, because that's a Masonic code. There's only but so many people who can have that based upon the bloodline thing and how they monitor their society. This thing's about Caucasians and how they run their society. The Caucasians don't even know, because they have bred them to be able to block out certain times and instances and events that actually happen to them. They'll actually mind control somebody to make them think that they're living somebody else's life. You know what I'm saying? Well, like they're living their life and their name is Harry, but they've been living for 20 years. God. Get along. Anyway, we're at the point where the Tea Party people, they're all being confronted with that creative aspect of how to be able to capitalize on the militia movement rhetoric, the so-called Republican rhetoric, and the white supremacist rhetoric all at the same time. No. You know what I'm saying? It's crazy. No, it's not. You can get a thing and see. So, you know, they have different terms and all of this. So it's still, you have to understand how much of a mind screw it is when you have these people who are claiming to be one thing and they're not. They're making themselves seem like that they're from here because their ancestors were born here. But the farther back you go, the more you would understand that most of your ancestors were already here. And even if they were from, let's say, the Caribbean or Jamaica or something like that, all of that is America. All of that was part of the dominions that was already over here. Don't you find it funny that you could find so much information about black people in Africa and Egypt and everywhere else, but then if I start mentioning people like names like Bakau Hotan or the Kitwa Society or the False Face Society or Duke Billy Bowlegs or these people or Prince and Princess Mysteria, like, it's like, who is that? Who are these people? These are the cultural, iconic ancestors that were purposely taken out of history during the 500 years that was withdrawn from the calendar during the establishment of so-called temporal power of the Vatican. So when you take 500 years, and I would be more generous, I would say that they actually took maybe 2,000 years of active history and just, jumbled it up and then just threw it out there at people in successive ways at different times to create a world in which they could be seen as the rulers. Understand? The first step was to kill God. And the second step was to create a reality and an explanation as to how they came here, meaning how they evolved. So they chose the reptilian, Darwinian, Saurian aspect of that to later give way for people like David Icke to link that up with reptilian hybridization and what they refer to as Sadoun ancestry. Basically, exploit the reptilian section of the brain and make you believe that you came from, basically, come out in the 1800s. Well, let me rephrase that. If since they wanted to come out later with the alien thing, they needed a link in the past. So they create the link in the past through Darwin, through social Darwinism, through societal progression in the form of survival of the fittest, to then not only lay way for the premise of financial militaristic applications to that, but then also use that as the precursor to say, oh, well, see, when Darwin was studying the lizards on Galapagos Island, that makes sense, because now here we're dealing with these reptilian things. You see what I'm saying now? But nobody that you have ever met has actually seen a reptilian. You've seen probably people shift out. But in terms of becoming an active black or white or whatever type of reptilian you want to say, we have yet to witness that. And we witness it in forms of movie, which means that which means that it's more of a possibility and is now being injected into the consciousness through visual stimulation, backed with or couched with a basic agenda to be able to get you to make it real for them. I believe in the technology so much that you give them the ability to make it happen. More so than them being able to do it themselves. They can't do it themselves because they know that they're exploiting and working against God to make it happen. And because, again, they use Nietzsche, who was a pedophile and had an incestuous relationship with his sister, was already in play. They use him to kill God. God symbolically being the mystery of life, but also God being the original man, original woman, original child, in which now the new God, the anti-God, the white man, white woman, white child, comes up as the natural succession or order of creation, which again gives justification to images of a white Jesus and everything else. So everything supports everything else. Every lie creates the next lie that then couches the other lie, and then you just be one day just like, okay, well, yeah, I guess it is that. And then you wind up going to a church and worshiping a white God or whatever else, and then marrying a white woman and having a white baby and everything else.
And it's okay to do that when you have not really retained.
It's okay to do it. Yes, it's okay to do that if you actively know that that's what you're going into. But most people don't. Or worse, when they're around people like us, they're confronted with the fact of that, and then it becomes our problem. Then we're the issue. Well, you talking about that shit, so that's why it happened. You thinking negative thoughts, so that's why it's coming back to you. That's true. That's true in a boomerang effect underworld or realm in which things are balanced out. Yet, what we perceive as things being balanced is based on the time that we're in. So, something happens to you negative, you would like to see whatever happened negative to you to be justified by the time you get out of here. So, you're still placing it in the realm of a physical time place construct that anchors you to the physical aspect of it, in which now you leave and then you wind up coming back to get it done. But now you got to get it done in a whole new way, and you may not even realize that that's why you came back in this new incarnation to do that. So to safeguard and get past all of that, that's the problem. That's the devil. That's the thing that is catching us up in this treadmill of mundanity, because we're scared to look beyond or link up things that apparently have an origin that's common. Yet commonality to most people means that you have to sacrifice an individualistic self, which is true, let's say, to a degree. Yet everyone dictates their own level of involvement in whatever they're doing. So it's not contingent upon you to save every black person or create a movement for original black people to come around. It's for original black people to want to do that themselves and be attracted to do that themselves and put energy and time and money into doing that themselves. You can get a grant to do stuff. Whatever you got to do it. If you know you're doing it for the purpose of the betterment and the ascension and preservation of our cultural, spiritual, celestial intellect, then we're working together. That may not mean, though, that we're working together in the sense of like we're there, because you could be a Republican. You could be with these niggas, you know what I'm saying, up in their stuff. You could be a person, a bodyguard to one of them. You could be whoever. And still, right.
Separate and understand that that's a job.
Exactly. Yes, you also have to know that the longer you stay within that system without doing something to alter or expose it, you wind up becoming a part of it. That's why they'll let you be, you'll have moles in the game that'll go for years undercover, but eventually, or spies, but eventually when they bring them in for debriefing, when they bring them in for debriefing, eventually they have to get rid of them because you can't trust them. Because they already have been in the enemy's camp for so long, you can't really. But see, in the old Moorish Latin, we had three forms of, let's say, communication. We had Law Latin, you know, and then we had basic, let's say, Vulgate Latin, and then we had esoteric and exoteric Latin, which was used in places where commerce in Caucasoid serfs was taking place, which is why they'd be so quick to tell you Latin's a dead language, because there's aspects of it that binds them. There's a certain respect that you got to give somebody who know how to talk that shit, because it's a genetic thing. Certain languages hit certain tones. But English can do the same thing if you know what you're really saying and you're really behind it, regardless of how bastardized and hybridized and screwed up it is. There's more people in the world that want to speak English than want to speak other shit. So that tells you something. And remember, under the Caucasian definition of indigenous, means that he fought in wars for his own freedom, in which he could go back. Well, those who were brought over here in bondage and fought for their own freedom and returned to their own culture, language, and societal structure. We didn't do that. We speak in their language, if you think about it. So what they're saying, again, is they, brought over here in bondage, fought for us in our wars. We came up, or an aspect of us came up at the expense of the whole empire. And they then were rewarded by being able to return to their own culture, which was the English culture. English with an E. Whereas the English with a Y, the English, the old Moors, the Huguenots, the Hessians, these types of Moors who were already here, who had dealings with the Republican Moors of the Algonquin Confederacies and everything else, had Christian names, and then they had, native names, the same way we have today. That's why we have them, because we're these people. Yet, due to the fact that the Black Masons in that Confederacy, prior to the split between the Prince Hall and the John Belmont Masons, you're dealing with a war that is popped off on one level, but has all of these implications in all of these other wars that's happening all over the planet. So it popped off in France, but it congealed over here. And then it goes to Russia, and then it goes to China. And then this ushers in the so-called modern world, in which machinery and industry becomes the capital instead of the, like I said, you go from empires, kingdoms, dominions to nations, countries, and states. And now we're in the changeover in which you're from nation, countries, and states to plutocracies and technocracies. So, as original people, well, like we said, there was a guy named Nicholas Leon who basically said that the ancient African presence in America was, in fact, he said, black people were the original people or first people of Mexico. And the memories of them in the most ancient traditions induce us to believe that the Negro was the first inhabitant of Mexico. This is from a book in Mexico called The Historia of the General de Mexico from 1919. So, when you talk about the aspect of Mexicans now and what they are today and what they were back then, there's a bond with us with all of these different groups. Like the Mexicans out here be showing us and the baby mad love. But I know they're not like that with everybody. You know what I'm saying? So, how you are is how you perceive yourself. And how you perceive yourself is how other people perceive you. Because you create the image. If you don't create the image, then you let other people create the image for you or take control of that, then you become subject to whatever they say you are. That's why everybody deserves credit for what it is they create. You know what I'm saying? But we don't. There's a book you can get called Black Scientists. And it's hundreds of pages of black men who contributed to the basic instance of what science was. And the money that was funded a lot of these men came from the establishment of the black network of banks through Black Wall Street going all the way back to Harlem. So the white man helps get his black Masonic slaves to now induce the so-called Harlem Renaissance to introduce an aspect of homosexuality into the black community, because we really wasn't on it like that. And it was ushered in through black intellectuals. W.E.B. Du Bois, Booker T. Washington, Langston Hughes, everybody that you hear out on Black History Month were actually proponents of aspects of these, or allowed themselves to be used as proponents of that agenda, which behind it, which came Planned Parenthood and everything else, because Margaret Sanger and H.G. Wells and W.B. Du Bois were Confederates. They used to go to the roundtable discussions that were thrown by the Carnegie Mellon, that were all ritual houses for them to be able to start to shape how they were going to create what's going on right now. So the whole alien thing is just a cover for, it will be a technological cover or a technological way for them to induce mass demonic possession of everyone through the summarized image of whatever God they project holographically to whatever person based upon that. You know, there was a lot of them. There was Samuel Huntington Bay, who was the first president of the United States Congress assembled from March 1st, 1781 to July 6, 1781. There was Thomas McKeon, second president of the United States Congress assembled July 10th, 1781 to November 5th, 1781. John Hanson Bay, third president of the United States and General Congress assembled, the most known, November 5th, 1781 to November 4th, 1782. Elias Boudon Bay, fourth president of the United States and General Congress assembled, November 4th, 1782 to November 3rd, 1783. All the way down to John Hancock, you know, to Osiris Griffin Bay. And then the last being the transition into Washington. But John Hanson was indeed the overseer of it all. You know, but he came from a family of Bavarian Moors who had ancestry from the Holy Roman Empire. His family used to guard the Swedish royal family under Joseph Gustav, who was a black man. If you get the book, Great Men of Color, or Google him, you'll see. There's no denying the fact. And again, it shows you that there's nothing that these people have or have been presented to you to have had that does not come from you. They are living off the labor and basics of the people through ignorance. And that ignorance has created a debt. And that debt has trickled down to the point where it's infected every living organism on the planet. And they're not stopping because their agenda is to do that. You know what I'm saying? That's what they're here to do. They're here to destroy everything about the country. That was the initial instance. Again, get the book, Preacher from Jekyll Island, or the other book, The Forgotten Cause of the Civil War. There's another book called Servants of Allah. So, you know, John Hanson himself, he was born on April 3rd, you know, so he was an April Aries. So, but then again, under the current calendar, it would be April 13th. But either way, he's still an able Aries. Number 3. And he and his family, like I said, they were from the first house of what today is known as Hanover. But the Hanovers came out of the Habsburgs, who had a fleet of ships called the Hanseatic League. And the Hanseatic League was one of the foundations that had mercenary soldiers attached to them, like the Hessians, like the Janissaries, like the Demim warriors, the so-called Hashemite assassins. These guys were all associated, and all of them served the Grand Seigneur, who was the great governor of the world at the time, who was Muhammad bin Abdullah Bey, who elected after to then have the throne taken to Turkey after the this happened maybe 200 years after the fall of what we today call Constantinople. That is now Istanbul. It signified the end of Christian rule on a world scale. But in that, the Western Empire of Rome sacrificed the Eastern Empire because the Eastern Empire was more Coptic and more original, because they fell under the jurisdiction of the Abyssinian peoples. Researched a guy named King Elesban, Elesbann, who was a great Coptic Moorish king of Axum, the Axumite Empire, which today would be what we would consider the Rastafarian Empire. It's like an angel. You know? But after, getting back to Hanson, after the Battle of Bunker Hill, what was then called Breed's Hill, on July 17th, Hanson argued and pleaded the cause of the colonies to his people, in the sense that the colonies were originally peopled by the denizen Moors, meaning these original Moors who came over from England, who brought with them the textiles and trades and serfs to create plantations, to send back money to the king, and then pay us rent. And then in that they were supposed to have, but they couldn't keep no money, basically, because they weren't allowed to have a bank, because they had no flag, because technically they were still under the jurisdiction of the so-called foreign powers. But the thing about that, if you think about England then, when it comes to the vexillology of the flag, the so-called Union Jack at that time was representative of those so-called Moors, meaning the naturalized British proprietors. They were denizen, meaning coming over, semi-sovereigns who come over from another land to establish a corporate venture on behalf of a relative. These denizen British Moors who joined into what was then the Franciscan United States. Franciscan meaning they were free, or Frankish Moors who were connected through Gaul, which is now France, through the line of Charlemagne, going all the way back to a time called the Battle of Tours, when Charlemagne created an alliance with the Moors of the Holy Roman Empire. And they eventually had a society which translated then into a civilization that translated into a society, which then translated into a brotherhood, which then translated into a collective idea that they all shared that was referred to as Franciscan. They were free Moors, or Moors who, may practice hermitage, but then like ate pork, or didn't practice hermitage, but had a mosque, spoke Arabic, wore fez, but were Coptics, stuff like that. So these Moors were allowed to establish incorporated farmland that were turned into estates or plantations or colonies for the so-called former British Empire, as well as themselves as individual people who had some sort of relationship, maybe by blood, by the original people who allowed them to establish that land, who were already here. So in that, the general United States government was then eventually created out of these people for their Caucasian serfs that they could then rule over them through, which was then created called the Federal Corporate Government, U.S. However, then the former or nationalized people under Article 1, Section 4. So the naturalized so-called British proprietors therefore never intended to actually set the Caucasian white slaves free, even though the Constitution under Article 8, Section 9, Clause 1, would denote that a termination of slavery of these people had to occur between 1807 and 1808. This is why the Constitution makes a declaration between slavery and African slavery. They talk about slavery first. Then they make a special clause to talk about African slavery, meaning those so-called brothers and sisters who were taken as prisoners of war from the African wars, from the destabilization or decline of the Moorish Empire, and then brought over here as POWs. Declared by us as POWs, declared by Caucasians in their records as Africans and slaves. Whereas a slave traditionally was seen as a Slovenian, somebody from Slovakia. Therefore, the Union Jack itself, you know what I'm saying? The Union Jack, in that, could not represent the so-called Denison Moors or British proprietors, also known as the captains of the colony, also known as the governors of the colony, the Beys. They didn't have a flag to represent them. They were basically an annexed corporate nation of states prior to their so-called War of Independence of the state, not to be confused with the Revolutionary War initiated by the former Moorish original Monarchan, Algonquin, Wabanaki, Moors that was going through their own conflict from dealing with the British. Because the British had already established long ties through the blood, the same way the French did through the Maison de Rouge. That's why they did what they did to the Washita. So you had a 48-state semi-republic, ancient, immortal confederacy that eventually molded into what was called the original Continental Congress, that then eventually got split into the Continental Congress of the United States and General Congress assembled to the Congress of the United States. So then you have the historic national flag of the United States of America, Congress assembled. Then you have the flag of the United States of America. But what they did was institute the word for of. Because with for, they would have to do shit. With of, they can represent, like they're going to do something. In their language, and how they were trained to understand law through an ancient organization called the House of Burgess, which is sometimes hard to find information of. But these so-called Burgomaurs were the ones who were dealing with the science of law and government, as Ben Bay put it down, to be able to establish how it was going to be molded and funded to everybody else. There were societies like the Kituwa Society, KITWAH society that dealt with that, as well as the False Faith Society of the Longhouses, to research those two. There's a good book called Sacred Drift, written, in which Noble Joe Ali was cited as one of the original example of what the Cherokees or Saudages were really like. They didn't have a written language until Sequoia came, who, when you see him, even though they make him look white now, he was wearing a turban with ostrich feathers. Now ask yourself, when you see images of Indians with ostrich feathers, where they got ostrich feathers from if there was no ostriches in America at the time. Same thing, when you look at European photos and you see them with oranges in the bowl, you have to wonder where they was getting the oranges from. This shows you how far we was taking trade. Just sometimes how you got to look at stuff too, because oranges are called naranj in my vulgar Arabic, as well as naranja in my vulgar Spanish. So these two words culminate to the same idea in Moorish old romantic languages that all stem from Latin. But it also shows the independent geographic location of the produce created, because oranges at the time did not exist anywhere else but Florida. That's why Florida oranges are so coveted. So this shows you that there was an exploitation going on. But what they do is they lump all of that under the term the Spanish territory. But the word Spanish was instituted to denote Moorish in 1526 under Charles V. So that means that from that point on, everything that came from Moorish was Spanish, but everything that was Spanish is then actually Moorish. So there's a unification in the language, but there's also a color delineation in it as well, based upon the influence of Moorish blood and how much relevance it is to the people of the day, showing you your instant relativity. Why everybody wants to have a black baby, but nobody wants to take care of black kids. What the hell is that about? Even when you see these black kids with white people know that they don't really know what to build with these kids on. Love is one aspect of life. If God was going to make love everything, then love would be everything. Love is everything in the abstract, but it's not everything in the literal aspect that every physical thing that you do is going to lead to an act of love. That is imbalance. That, again, is a Western occultist mentality on the physiological aspects of bioluminescent energy as it translates to physical reality and how it interplays in interpersonal relationships. It's a form of word spell. So again, we're talking about two different declarations. A declaration put forth by the original people who had come from sections of individual nations of original people who were indigenous, who were here already, who had dealings family-wise, people-wise, culture-wise, with people from black people who may have been lighter skinned and spoke a different form of dialect from other lands, who then some stayed and then became a part of that nation and then influenced the course of how those nations would be. So the term then Union Jack includes a dash. You know what I'm saying? And even in law, when they write it with a dash, which means that it's often used to indicate the omission or the the term of series which are to be supplied in the reading, thus being equivalent to something inclusive. You know what I mean? So if I write John chapter 3 dash 20, you know that dash means everything in between 3 and 20. So that's how they sometimes use literal and graphic language grammatically, as it means to show you that there's more to it without telling you that there's more to it. So in times that they do that, sometimes they'll use dots, sometimes they'll use indentation. So there's another term called surecoat, which is used by the English soldiers, which is really another word of art, which is to conceal the historic fact that the shirkate, S-U-R-C-A-T-E, accent over the E, was a representation of the coat of arms of the Moors of the Sur or Uber line given to the Cote. This is another form of totem, like an animalistic. This is why sometimes in Moorish crest you'll see like a wolf's head or a peacock or something like that. So kate is another way of saying more. So a surecoat is another way of saying shirkate, and shirkate is another way of saying more. So S-U-R is more. So when you see the Ein Sof or the Ein Sof or, excuse me, the Sor is more, black. So the original first flag of the corporate colonial United States was officially raised on January 1st, 1776. And originally it was called the Cambridge flag. Research that. The official United States in Congress assembled. The Congress passed no resolution with the adoption of this denizen flag. They just did it as an umbrage to those of us who allowed them to establish a existence for themselves on this hemisphere, and the ability to allow their slaves to eventually, I guess, be freed. Well, no, they never intended that to happen. You know, for allow them to have their slaves like that, have their slaves have a society for themselves, without infringing on the liberties of us that was already here. You know what I'm saying? So because we passed no legislation for them to do that, they just did that as a ritual. So the Cambridge flag of 1776 is the Union Jack flag of the nation of Great Britain, and is not the dashless Union flag displayed in what they refer to as the Merriam-Webster New International Dictionary of English Language. Therefore, the flags to color from the American Revolution are different than the ones they talk about now. The flag that is used, whenever you see them use Union-Jack, so if they show and what's his name, William and Kate walking under, and they have in the caption, in the picture, and then in the caption they say, here it is, William and Kate holding the Union Jack or waving the Union Jack. If they write Union Jack with a dash in it, that is showing you that the Windsor family is descended from those families that are descended from those black families that own them. Because that is the family that's in establishment in so-called Europe right now. That's why they are falling directly under jurisdiction of the Vatican, because of that black family's relationship to what happened in 1215 with the English Moorish adoption of the Magna Carta. Basically what happened in 1214, the Vatican had reached a point where it had wiped out the Cathars and the Albigensians, and all that was left now were the Templars, who already turned against the original Templars, who were the black people, whatever. And what was left, the only people standing in their way, was the papacy and the Holy Roman Empire. So a deal was made that the Moors of Britain would not allow their slaves who were nobles amongst the Caucasian serfs who actually lived in those lands, freedom, they could be in peace. So eventually what happened was the opposite happened, in that there was a war that broke out or whatever, and then the Bavarian Moors made a deal that allowed these dudes to free some of their slaves, and then the Vatican came in and said, okay, well, from now on, whatever Britain owns belongs to us, which was the first time in history that an established, let's say, Caucasian establishment was becoming dominant in that way. This was during the time of the right before the rise of the bourgeois and all of these other people that came in the 1700s and all of that. But essentially, all of these guys fall under the jurisdiction of this original agreement. And these people use these agreements as the debts that keep their temporal fake power going. For me to even go into all of that is to show you how intricate the thread is that binds these little people's fake realities together based on this fictitious history that really is just a mirror of a richer, more real history that's tangible to me and my family and my people now, based upon how I interpret the events and how they happen. So depending upon that alters how this temporal power can influence me and conjoin me to do certain things. Because I do not see myself limited based upon the perception of what I look like in a colorable society. What they're also telling people is that when they say African ancestry, when they go to Ancestry.com, stuff like that, African ancestry, what they're not telling you is that African ancestry does not mean African nativity. That is to say that Africa today was named after a Canaanite. It was not named after Scipio Africanus, who, in a sense, was a Canaanite who became Roman. You understand? But when I say Roman, I'm not talking necessarily about Holy Roman, the black Romans. I'm talking about the black Romans that allow an aspect of their mercenary or military Christian slave army to become autonomous and have a state for itself, in which it paid tribute back to the greater universal Holy Roman state that had a greater force around them aside from what was happening in Carthage, known as the, let's say, mystic Turks, who had under them wild Germanic hordes that they used or let loose against whatever little fake civilized Caucasian Romans was trying to do their thing. So in this type of period, the feudal period, the life expectancy of a person is no more than maybe 30 years old. So you understand the level of maturity physically that you have to go through in order to sustain a world like that. This is the society that they want to revolve the world back to now. They want to take you from the 80s now, maybe bypass the 60s, because they already did that, bypass the 70s, bypass that, and maybe bring you into the direct 50s. That's what the show Mad Men is about. You know? That's why the guy from Mad Men is Magneto in the X-Men First Class movie. You see? Because it's a means, and Magneto is an allegory for Malcolm X. So here is Malcolm X again showing us what may or may not have been going on, because in that movie you see ultimately that the Cuban Missile Crisis was about these superhuman people about to manifest on the world, the United States and Russia unifying as white men to get together to destroy them on Patmos Island. Because then, you know, they fight. The stand that they have to make is on the island. So that's the island of Patmos, in which revelation is to come, which means that the beast is the people with this within us, because we are the beast or the devil to the system. The system is the beast or the devil to us. It is a mirrored relationship that is established through a symbiotic understanding of how these correspondences become actualized through not only the Kabbalistic tree of life from Sephiroth, or let's say from Keter to Malkuth. I'm not even going to get into all of the other ones. Let's say from the beginning, from the head to the foot. It's where we got to start dealing with shit, as opposed to get caught up in all the pathways on the side. Because the shit on the side is a diversion. This is why, in physical reality, the instance of the pathway between Keter, Dot, Malkuth, Yesod, Malkuth, is the straight line between 2 points. You know? But essentially, you know, people like C. Freeman L., people like Noble Kedar Bey, people like Brother Big Man, people like Brother Daoud, people like Jewel Pukram, people like Valaria L. Bey, people like all of the sort of, you know, unsung people who really made a lot of reference. Brother in Conscious Ken, I saw one time, he was really good. You know, Uriel Bey is a really good brother in terms of just, you know, watching what people do. And, you know, a lot of times the more you do, the less you're seen. You know what I'm saying? You got to do the knowledge. The more people around you have, the more alone you'll feel sometimes. You know what I mean? Because everything becomes the opposite. Once you get the money, once these niggas get the money, they start making records about how they don't need it and how they give it all back. The reason why they say that is because of what they have to do and what they have to agree to become to be able to sustain it, what they have to show, what they have to represent. These are real things. You got rappers doing Revlon commercials. You got black male rappers doing Revlon commercials. You know what I'm saying? Yet, you know, people have perceptions about, people care more about something like that than the fact they have a billboard that basically says the worst place for a baby to be in the world, a black baby to be in the world, is in the womb of a black woman. This is what is in the public. Big, giant billboard with a little black child, not with a perm like they'll usually have on TV. No, this child got to have a nappy hair and everything else. Whenever you see these white people with babies, their babies have the most nappiest hair. Their baby hair be as natural as possible. They don't put nothing artificial in no black baby. They'll put like tofu and soy and shit, but all of that baby shit be thousands of dollars. They make sure the genetics in this baby be exactly what little black babies need. They won't know how to maintain it or nothing. That's why they'll have a Spanish lady or a West Indian black lady around the baby to help really do it. But in the end, this is how they do it. Whereas black people, black women, they'll do the opposite. They'll perm that baby hair. I saw some shit where baby hair was permed at 2 years old, man. Ain't no black man doing that. You know what I'm saying? Ain't nobody making this black woman do that. And I'm speaking about this black woman as an individual. I'm seeing this on YouTube. You know what I'm saying? But it's reflective in general because, again, to no matter how much it is, the white man know what the perm represents to him sociologically. To him, he understands. So whatever you want to justify, whatever you want to justify it to be, I'm not passing no judgment on none of that. I'm just saying that psychologically and sociologically, what it means to the adversary is that he is still in control. Bottom line, that's it. You know what I'm saying? I'm not getting into anybody's personal politics or whether I agree with it or whether I don't. Or all of that is already what it is. The data has already been presented. It's more about what we understand it to be and how we're going to represent it to be within ourselves or for ourselves. And everybody should have the right to look and be and represent it how they want to be. Yet that still does not take out the universal aspect of that, which is that we as original people are seen as reflections of our entire race. You understand what I'm saying? Nobody else in the world is like that. Nobody look at a Chinese person and say, oh, this Chinese person may be, you know, a Chinese secret agent. People don't even think that about Chinese people. People don't even think about what's going on in Chinatown. places like that, places where only nationalities like that exist. Because people who speak their own language have their own universe. They got their own reality because that's the language they speak. That's why hip-hop was so ill. But the problem is we started teaching everybody else how to do it, and now we can't take credit for nothing. That's why these niggas, as much as power and as big and as many gold chains, these niggas be impotent because they can't actually stand up and say, no, this shit was created by black people, and I do it primarily for black people. Or my fundamental base is original black people. If other people get on with it, that's cool. But it seems like if you say that, you whack. But then, like I said, I'm watching all types of other shows, and these comedians and these entertainers and these people is bigging up their culture first. Understand? But like when we do it, it's a problem. But the problem is we don't do it enough. Because the problem is all we care about is getting money and getting by and getting a nice car and everything else. Whereas 60 years ago, the mind state was to be able to get to the level to be able to do this. So now we're to the level we could do it, and it seems like we're worse off. So how is it that the more progressive we get, the more sociologically backward we downgrade? How can that be possible? And say that we are in a civilized and upwardly mobile society. How can anyone argue the fact that the basis of Western physiology is based on eugenics, which is the primary foundation of Western or American fundamental psychology from 1861 to now? No matter who has been in control, it's always been a white man, and that white man has always been put in positions in which he has done things to maintain the status quo. He do not like racism enough to say that there's this penalty for racism and that's it. There's no absolutes in American society, in American political structure. Yet you cannot have a governmental structure without absolute measures. That's why the government applies the absolutism to measures that seem benign. So they'll tell you that there will be a new healthcare switch, but they won't tell you that one of the aspects of it is that they encourage you at points when you reach between 60 and 65 to start thinking about going into hospice where you engage in a premeditated suicide. They encourage you to kill yourself. This is part of the shit that you're going to have to take on when you get an HMO. These are some of the things that have already been in place that's now just being implemented. So these are things that you're going to have to either agree to be a part of or say, no, I'm not going to have health insurance because I'm not going to agree that my soul goes to you based on this clause in Article 8, Section Z, Clause 5, Subsection 3, that says you give my soul too. No, I can't sign this thing, so that means I can't have no health care. You understand? But if health care is mandatory, that means I'm breaking the law. You see how they set you up? They already got you locked in. And nobody is going and saying that you shouldn't do this. And the people that are being called conspiracy theorists. Yet the people that were at one time the same people supporting this guy who's president now. But this is the nigga that's flipping all of this shit on everybody. But I'm supposed to be happy that this nigga's in there and he's doing what he's supposed to do. He can do what he's supposed to do. Yet, so long as it doesn't affect me to the point. But see, even in me saying that, there's a part of it in which I unwittingly, or whether I want to or not, am supporting the apathy that keeps it going. Because there's only but so much I can do. It's like sometimes the more you know and the more you find out, the less you got to say. Like there's so much shit I don't talk about. You know what I'm saying? Because essentially, you know, a lot of us, we're not even, like, we just got to get ready, man. And that's what all of these movies are showing you. You know what I'm saying? That all of this shit is going on within you. This Green Lantern shit that came out. You know what I mean? I peeped that. Peeped the Transformers shit. Like, it's all the same shit. There's something coming, and it's coming from the outer world, and it's going to change everything. So, whether it's a meteor, a planet, melanin, dark matter, dark particles, dark energy, green men, yellow men, purple men, whatever they're going to try to make it be, whatever it really is, it's not going to change what's happening within us. Whatever. what worse could happen that you haven't seen in a movie? What else could happen? Like, what haven't you seen? You've seen dead people come alive. You've seen people get shot in the brain. Think about all of the people you've seen shot since you've been a baby to now. No matter how I try to not show, you could not have a TV and your child still know what a damn person looked like shot in the head, what a dead body looked like. How did that happen? But then these same people will talk about how sovereign they are because they don't have a TV, they don't eat this, they don't do that, I don't do this, I only meditate on this, I got this, my whole shit is hooked up. Like, metaphysics is one thing. Occultism is one thing. Esotericism is one thing. All of these things have dimensions and realms within themselves. And not many people can navigate all of them without going mad. And that's what's going on. It's Uranus energy that's coming out in retrograde is bringing up old feelings in which people were forced to show and prove who they are as unique entities, and either passing or failing in that. And those people being confronted with the will and the truth of these entities through other things and other means in the world. You don't even know how many times you people that you know in your life, they see you in other things. They see you in birds. They see you in trees. They see you in all types of shit that they don't tell you. Yet, we don't have a society in which these things could be taken seriously and being actualized. You know what I'm saying? So, it's a situation in which we continue to constantly be opened up and valued as we devalue and deconstruct the reality around us. So one way to do that is to be creative, is to create alternative realities and everything else to be socially less dependent upon whatever these people decide to do with their rotting society. It's over. It's been over. Everybody knows it's been over. All they're saying is that they haven't defaulted, but the default has already happened 8 times. You can't have the stock market that crashes 10 times in a year.
Yes, you can.
You can't do it. So this was the ultimate problem with globalism in the first place. Everybody knew that when you link everything up to the same system, if one thing breaks down, everything breaks down, which is what they wanted. This is what they wanted. This is what the League of Nations was. This is what the Article of Association was trying to set up. It's all the same thing because it's the same people, the same bloodline, everything else. To get rid of it, you'd have to get rid of everyone at the top and everyone 22 levels under them. Then everybody under them would have to be sequestered into places to then have to be desocialized, denationalized, and those that couldn't make it would have to go. And then after that, you would then have to be faced with what to do with all of the children. And then that goes into another realm. But by the time you go through all of that, you've already started to reinstitute their society now through you. You see what I'm saying? It's an ultimate sickness. It's like no matter what you trying to do to get away from it, it's like it's another tentacle beard. You know what I mean? So the only thing you could do you know what I'm saying? Again, that's consciousness, keeping you alive. That's you raising your consciousness to the point that, yeah, it's something that was like, yeah, the brother was saying he'd been in the Navy for a minute, and he'd been in perfect health. And that's rare. You know. You know, that shit is rare. And again, that's consciousness. You know what I'm saying? Creating a bubble of protection around you. And it's the same one that exists around all of us when we do it. So essentially, guys, you know, whatever you're doing tonight, be safe. I don't know. I wrote him, but I didn't holler at him. I wished him happy Father's Day as it passed. He said peace. That was about it. I didn't really speak to him. I hope he's well. But long story short, guys, you know, I want you guys to have a great weekend and, you know, do your thing, be safe. And we'll get together Monday night and make it happen again, man. Thank you for listening to these aspects of it. I hope it's more with your research. Anybody interested in the ecclesiastical law class we have coming up on July 13th, that's this Wednesday coming up, holler at us. A couple of slots are still open. And houseofl@hotmail.com. You could also check out some of our other earlier works as well as classes, as well as books that we have that's out as well as coming out on our website, www.aseer.com, as well as www.sagaasad.com.
And look out for Aseer. It's coming up like in 2 weeks. www.darkskull418, thedarkskull418.com.